guys, welcome to my first ever White Cottage Diaries entry. I'm so excited to be starting a new type of channel here, and I hope you're all excited to join me on this new adventure. I thought I'd start off with an evening gardening video as it's peak gardening season here for me and what I've been quite focused on in my spare time. The project that I'm working on here is in my shade garden near the gated entry to my backyard. I'd planted a couple things here about 2 summers ago, but really started focusing on getting it filled in last summer before I got too pregnant to really do much gardening. I picked up a couple plants for my birthday for this spot, so coming up you'll see me getting those in the ground. But before I get started, I wanted to show you some before pictures of this spot. We bought our house about 8 years ago, and the previous owners did not garden with the exception of a just incredibly massive raised bed that they had some vegetables growing in the backyard. The rest of the yard, front and backyard, was just grass and weeds, and we had some help pulling that grass a few years back, and ever since then I've just started filling in with some plants. I'm going to get started by filling a 5-gallon bucket with water and a splash of some super dried fertilizer that I picked up this year. It's new to me, but so far I like it. I had seen some gardeners online suggesting that doing a pre-soak of their plant's root ball can really help to prevent any transplant shock, so I thought I'd take extra time this year to do that when planting up anything new. So far I've tried it out. I've planted a couple hydrangeas and a new privet out front, and I've gotten them in the ground, and I've had some really hot, dry days, lots of wind, and they just really haven't even skipped a beat. I haven't seen any of them like shriveling, losing any of their leaves, or looking like dry or sad, so I think it's working. I figured when I did this, it wouldn't hurt to add some fertilizer into the water to give the plants a nice boost. And also I'm out of my usual fertilizer that I add to the plant hole when I plant, so I'm just using this as a nice substitute. I'm starting off here getting a new hosta planted under this birdhouse I have hanging on the back fence. After soaking the plant in its can, I noticed that there was a ladybug along for the ride, so I had to take a second to save him. He was kind of wet and I felt a little bad. So we've had a lot of ladybugs this year so far, which is really good because I've also had a lot of aphids. So good luck to him, and hopefully he gets after those aphids. Anyways, I need some different foliage in this area. It was starting to look like a lot of the same color, and when I was planting here a couple summers ago, I went kind of crazy planting a lot of variegated foliage because that tends to be my favorite, but it turns out it's not really my favorite when you have too much of it in one small area. As I get this planted up, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about White Cottage Diaries. One reason I wanted to start this channel is to not only give others inspiration, but also to inspire and really motivate myself. I often get paralyzed by the sheer amount of things that I have to do, like in my home, my garden, and even in some of my hobbies. Even though they're fun, I get paralysis. When I go back through old pictures and see the before shots, it can be a real motivator to me. So I wanted to use this channel as a diary or journal showcasing the befores, the afters, and of course the progress along the way, hence the name White Cottage Diaries. Once I got the bright green hosta planted, I moved on to another hosta that I had picked up. It has a nice blue leaf color, and I wanted to add a hosta that gets really big because I don't have any of those in my garden, and I just think they're so impressive. So I picked up this one. It gets about 4 feet wide and 3 feet tall. I took some time to cut away a few of sun-scorched leaves. I had planned on planting this in a different area in my backyard and took a few days kind of moving it around a few different spots to see where I liked it best. I thought the area that I was planning on planting it in got shady earlier in the day than it actually does, so I had to change my plans a bit. But during that process, the plant did get some sun damage, so I just took a moment to clip those leaves out, and I've decided I'm just going to plant it in full shade in this back corner, and I think it'll be nice and happy there. As I tried to figure out where I wanted to plant the second hosta, I discovered that there was a little hydrangea that I had planted and completely forgot about, hiding under the massive Japanese anemones that spread quite aggressively in this spot. I took a moment to clear around the hydrangea and just pulled out and cut back some of the anemones to give it some space. I probably will end up having to move a few things eventually as things get bigger, but I'm okay with that. I tend to do that a lot in my garden, and I'm totally fine with moving stuff around as needed. These anemones were planted here about 3 years ago. I got them from my mom's old neighbor from her own garden. She had a whole bunch that had spread, and so she potted some up, and I took some home. I actually left them in a pot for like at least a full year before planting them, so if that tells you kind of how strong of a plant they are and how aggressive they can be. These ones are very light pink, and they're really, really pretty. Last year I was sitting on my back porch, and I was just kind of looking at them as they bloomed, and the wind was blowing through them, and I had the idea to hang a few birdhouses on the fence, so the flowers could be like right below them, just kind of bobbing in the wind. It's really quite like whimsical and fun when they're in bloom, and they just really remind me of a fairy garden. And speaking of those birdhouses, I don't know if you saw and it was bothering you, there is one like at the top of the fence that's crooked. I do fix that later in the video. It's like a big common issue because we have a few squirrels that run along the top of the fence, and they just knock it loose every time they do it. Here you're going to see me cutting away at some weed barrier fabric that we have under the mulch back here. I have been working on removing like large chunks of this fabric as I garden this year. I actually took some areas of it out last year too, but again, I was far too pregnant to be doing a whole lot in the garden. So this year it's been one of my big goals. It's done its job for me, which is holding off some of the weeds, especially some of the invasive stuff that we have in our yard, while I work in various areas of the yard. And I know that without that weed barrier, when I first put it in the planting beds that I have now, there would just be no way that I could have kept on top of maintaining everything. It's a lot of work as it is. I am the only one that works in the garden at my house. So that weed barrier, that weed fabric was just a tool that I used when I first started gardening for the purpose of holding off those invasive weeds. Now that I've started really filling in plants and using ground covers, especially this year, and I've also created like a nice thick crust of mulch, mostly in the front yard with the mulch, I do work to pull as much of that yard fabric out as I'm working in each area of the garden. This way the dirt can get the nutrients from the mulch and the feed that I apply, but the plants can also just freely spread and the roots can actually reach through to the dirt without having any issues. I do definitely notice a big difference in the soil health between areas that no longer have the weed barrier and then the areas that do have that fabric put down. This barrier in the backyard was applied when we had that grass removed, like I talked about earlier, by the landscaper. It's like a really strange, like thin type of weed fabric. It really reminds me of like a type of interfacing. It's really easy to tear, and it definitely does a pretty terrible job of blocking out the really bad couch grass that we have growing in our yard. But I have noticed that the soil health under this type of weed barrier is much better than I have up in the front yard under that type of weed barrier. Up front, I have that professional grade weed barrier, that shiny black stuff. However, I did notice that does do a better job of blocking weeds, but I did notice this spring that the apple tree that I had planted a few years ago had put out a bunch of roots, but it went over the top of that type of weed barrier. It wasn't getting through the fabric at all. So I removed that as soon as I saw that. I was working in that spot doing a few other things, and I would knock the roots of that tree and the tree would even wiggle a little bit. So it really showed me that I needed to get all that stuff out of there. And I'll be showing you that area in future videos because I do have a couple more things planned in that spot. Now I'm going to be working on planting up a japonica under this tree ivy. I needed some more variation in foliage in this spot because, as you can see, I have the variegation in this tree ivy and in the pittosporum that's growing behind me. That pittosporum is going to get quite big, and it is evergreen along with that ivy, so I needed something in this spot that was going to provide a different color with those plants all year long. This japonica has like a nice orangish red color on the new growth, so I think it's going to help offset some of the variegation in this spot. This area was in full shade as I was planting, but it does get a good amount of morning sun. This garden bed is on the west side of our house, and our house faces south. So as the sun rises, it takes a little bit to peek over some of the trees in the neighbor's yard, but once it does, these plants get hit by a bit of hot morning sun for quite a while until about midday. They do get a break later in the afternoon when it gets to that really hot, scorchy sun. This whole area gets shaded by the tree in our other neighbor's yard. It's an absolutely massive tulip tree that's actually blooming right now. During the summer, the tree is full of so much life. There's so many types of birds and squirrels that live in the tree, and it's actually the reason that I got the idea to put the bird houses right on the fence here, because I thought it could provide them with another place to nest. So far this year, we don't have any birds using the birdhouses, but that's fine. It may take some time for them to find the houses, but even if they don't, I think that's going to look really cute just hanging there right by the garden bed. I'm going to do a quick tour to show some of the other plants in this area. The full hydrangea that I'm showing right there is a wedding gown hydrangea that I transplanted from my mom's old garden. It's definitely a contender for my favorite type of hydrangea, and I can't wait for it to bloom this year because it's absolutely covered in flowers. There's going to be 2 purple ground covers that you see in this spot. Those are 2 different types of ajugas that I'm taking a chance on. This plant can be really aggressive, so I may be regretting that in the future, but for now they provide some of that color that was really needed here, and I think they're really pretty. The large ferns in this area were here when we moved in, and they just have occurred naturally. That right there is a mouse ears hosta, which is really probably my favorite hosta. I think it's my mom's favorite hosta too. It's just absolutely adorable. But anyways, the ferns are really pretty this time of year. I love them. They're nice and beautiful when it's cooler and it's wet, but when it gets later into the summer, and sometimes later in the spring, if we have a hot day, they do scorch pretty badly and brown up. So at that point, I cut them back, and then it just allows any of those hostas or hydrangeas that are growing underneath there to have their time to shine. I also planted this purple coral bells. Sorry, that's a mouse ears hosta that just was underneath some leaves for far too long, and I think a slug got to it, but it'll recover once it has some time to be on its own. There's that hydrangea that I found underneath the anemones. And as I said, the purple that was right there was the coral bells that I planted today. I'm not so wild about the color, but I'm gonna give it a chance because it does need some color back in that area. But it's in a spot that's pretty hidden from me most of the time, so I think I'll give it a go and it'll be okay. I wanted to take some time to thank you guys for joining me and for watching as I completed one of my evening gardening projects. I do most of my gardening in the evening after the girls have gone to bed. I like to turn on a podcast or some music or an audiobook, and I just find some peace creating different spaces in the garden. I will take the time to post the names of the plants that I put in the ground today in the show notes for you if you're interested. I hope you like this video format, and I invite you to give feedback as I create this new channel. Please bear with me though as I play around with video editing and voiceovers. It's new to me, but I think it's going to be a fun adventure. I hope you stick around, and of course, welcome if you're new here. Please remember to subscribe, like my videos, and comment below. This will help my videos to reach a larger audience. I would love to create a community of people that enjoy the same things that I do. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time on White Cottage Diaries.